Hello, everyone joining us online on Zoom. You will be on mute with your camera. Actually, you want to just stay that way. If you have any questions during the session, if you want to put them in the chat, that would be great. When are we coming up for you? All right. Hello, everybody. I think all of that tech is working correctly. If it's not, thumbs up. Thank you very much online. My name is Ellen Burns. I'm the host of Smart Living Ballarat, which is a free monthly workshop series put on in collaboration between the City of Ballarat and Breeze. Before we start today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Today's topic is co-housing. It was a requested topic last year from attendees of the workshops last year, and it's a really interesting topic. I'm glad to see a lot of people here today, both online and in person, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of people watching later at home as well. It's a very misunderstood topic, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to give you all a bit more information about it and maybe set a few things straight. And we will be going through a panel discussion towards the end of the session. And but I'm going to start with a quick presentation with a bit of history and information about co-housing. There we go. So obviously humans have been living together forever. For our entire history. This is nothing new. It's not a new concept that was recently invented. We often used to live in large mobile camps with people sometimes having their own separate family homes, sometimes having communal living. In the Middle Ages, it was common for people to have boarders and tenants and, you know, a spinster niece or an elderly uncle or something like that living with you. It was only around the 1200s that multi-generational living started to become quite uncommon in England, and it became a bit of a class divide in the Industrial Revolution as people flocked to the cities, and we went from about 15% of the world's population living in cities to 85%, something like that, in a very short amount of time. That saw the poorer people shoved all together and the rich people escaping that in their very large single family homes. And from that, it became something to aspire to have a big house just for your single family. It wasn't until 1924 that the term nuclear family pops up in etymology. And in 1967, we see, the mid-60s, we see the rise of the Danish concept of co-housing, which I will talk about a bit more in the next slide. And in the 70s, co-housing really took off in Denmark, and that's when we see kind of share houses also take off in Australia, the US, Japan, Germany, in quite a few places. This is not a global history. Obviously, there are a lot of countries around the world that never kind of left the co-housing model of people living in small communities together, even multi-generational living. There's some countries very close together that have a great divide. For example, in Germany, co-housing is quite common, share houses are quite common, but in Greece, it's very uncommon. It would be unthought of really to have a housemate. It's much more about just living with your family, maybe until you get married and move out and have kids, but multi-generational living is still very much the norm there. The definition of co-housing that we're talking about today is really the Danish concept of co-housing, which is generally people having their own private space. So whether that is a separate house, a separate apartment, or that kind of quite traditional separate space, often still with a kitchen and all the kind of amenities, but then with a communal living house, big kitchen, big entertaining area, big garden that you all work on, and a lot more of a community focused kind of working together to look after the kids, to look after the elderly, to look after the garden, to cook for each other and that kind of thing. It's not share housing. A lot of people, especially when I started advertising this session today, said, oh, that's great for some people, but I don't want to share my house, which just shows the kind of misconceptions that people have about this concept. I think especially in Australia, a lot of people are very used to having their space. We're very used to having space here in Australia and having quite private spaces very far away from other people. And there are a lot of people that don't want to give that up, and that's totally fine. And share houses are great, can I tell you? Like, I've lived in a lot of share houses, and I still have friends that are my age, you know, mid-30s, even married couples living with a housemate, living in share houses. So I'm not saying anything against share houses. I love them, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about this co-housing kind of concept. Jan Goodman Hoyer, apologies any Danish people for any of my pronunciation during this session. This is the man that's considered the father of modern co-housing. He's a Danish architect, studied in Copenhagen and Harvard, and started talking about this concept in 1964 with his friends. He was trying to get his friends to kind of get something like this going, and without much success for a while. And in 1968, he published an article called The Missing Link Between Utopia and the Outdated Single Family House. Around the same time, there was Bodil Gray. She was a journalist who focused particularly on women's and family societal kind of issues. And she published an article in 1967 titled Each Child Should Have 100 Parents. And it was a take on that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And the year later, her and Jan joined forces and started the two first co-housing projects that are still in operation today. Saterdamen and Skra Planet. I believe Saterdamen was the one that Jan kind of started and lived in, and Skra Planet was the one that Bodil started and lived in. But as you can see from their houses, I'll just quickly flick between these slides so you can see the houses. Very similar architecture there. I assume that Jan did the architecture for both projects. And the houses here are 3 stories, all identical houses touching on each other. So that 3 levels would be one family home, and each house was identical next to each other. So Saterdamen, however you correctly pronounce that, was founded in 1969. So that's the first example of the Danish co-housing kind of model that we see. And it's still operational with 35 households. I believe it started with 27 households, and they've kind of split off a few of the houses to fit a few more smaller families, and has 80 people living there. So they've got an outdoor common area, a common house that has a common kitchen, a common entertaining area. It's got a lot of play equipment, seems to be quite focused on young families and young kids. It's got a sandbox, it's got a trampoline, it's got slides, cubby house, all of that kind of thing. It's also got a barbecue, fire pit, and a soccer field. Skra Planet, quite near, but reasonably nearby, Jonstrup, Denmark. It took a couple of years longer to build. Both projects were started at the same time. This one was constructed in 1973. 33 households. I couldn't actually find the information on how many people live there at the moment, but only that there's 33 households there. So very similar to this one, so probably about 70 people living there. This one's got a swimming pool and a sauna. So I know which one I'd be living at. But with that comes the maintenance, and that's the great thing about co-housing. It doesn't really make much sense for us to all have a swimming pool in our backyard, especially in Ballarat. But if you are clustering a community around these kind of communal facilities, it makes sense, and you only have to clean the pool, once a year or something like that. I'm going to move to some Victorian examples. If I went global, we'd be here all day because there are so many examples and there's some really interesting ones. I do, encourage you to go out and research them for yourself. But I wanted to keep it quite hyper-local with this presentation, just to show you what is around in Victoria and that this concept is happening here. So Mura is in Mount Toolabawong. Didn't say that correctly probably either. And as you can see, it was founded in 1974, which is only a year after Scar Planet was completed. So this is really, really early. This is happening at the same time. And this is still an active co-op, co-housing community. It has changed slightly over the years. Two of the very large original dwellings are now hireable. So you can go there for, a training retreat or that kind of thing. And they do tours of the property, I think, once a month or even once a week or something like that. So they do have, they're very open with letting people come and have a look and see what they're doing and that kind of thing. As you can see, a little bit different from the Danish model, where each house is quite different and distinct. It's not the same as the Danish examples of all of the houses are identical and they're right next to each other. These houses are quite different and kind of dotted around the place. Sorry, I just realized that that's taking up a lot of space.
Each one of those sits on its own, like corporation or something.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yes. Trying to find out how to make it smaller. Sorry, everybody, maybe just make it smaller for now. Yeah, you can see kind of a quite large communal garden kind of in the middle there. But I believe that the houses do have some of their own individual gardens and facilities as well. Mary Faith, did you say you have been here? Do you want to say anything that I haven't covered?
Correct. They have individual, as you are, they have individual blocks, and there's a fair distance between a number of them, but they have lots and lots of communal activities.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Next example is Common Ground. Now, I have actually been to Common Ground. It's in Hilding, which is near Seymour, and it was founded in 1984. An interesting thing to note with this is that there were only 30 residents at the peak occupancy, which is quite a lot smaller than the other examples that we're showing. The other examples tend to be around 30 households, not just 30 residents. So I believe this was only 3 or 4 families. Do we have Phil from Common Ground online? Hi, Phil. I thought that was you. Phil, who is one of the founders of Common Ground, is actually joining us online. Do you want to speak to this, Phil?
I'll look briefly. We're a little bit different too, because we're an organisation that works with a lot of community-based organisations. So we host groups. For example, I think you came to an Environment Victoria event there, Emma.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So we host that. We have quite a strong relationship with Victorian Aboriginal groups who use the venue, refugee asylum seekers resource centres been. So that's part of our work. And the other thing is why it's been relatively small and even smaller at the moment is we were living communally. So it was that system whereby people actually lived down one end of this large mud brick building that you can see. And the other end, as we call it, is the venue end where we host groups. So yeah, it's a different model within the spectrum of intentional communities. So at one end, you might have like what we have done, which is communal living. The other end of the spectrum would be more like an eco village where I'm actually currently living with my partner at a place called the Cape down at Cape Patterson, which is more the eco village, and co-housing in a sense has aspects between both of those.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And is it your daughter that still lives there, or one of the founding
Yes,
members' daughters?
yes, daughter, son-in-law, grandchildren, and we have a membership. So the community side of it, living full time, has diminished a bit. But we have a membership that works with the organisation. So it's sort of like an extended community through that, and they work on the property, on management and governance of the organisation, and are actively involved with sort of the activities that we do. So it is a little bit different from the specific co-housing model. Yeah.
And on 95 beautiful acres, so it's quite a large property, isn't it? Which I had the opportunity to walk around when I was there. Yes, so as Phil mentioned, I was there on an Environment Victoria leadership retreat. I believe it was last year or the year before, and it is a communal living house where everyone had their own room. I stayed in the kids wing, so every bedroom has a little plaque on the door with whose bedroom that was, which is a really nice touch. And all of the kind of kids, or they would have been teenagers at the time, are up above the big games room that has a foosball table and lots of couches to lounge around in, and so really, cool space. So yeah, Common Ground is a little bit of a different example with that, I guess, where they were living in the same house, although Phil's daughter is now living on a separate house, but still on the same property. So it has kind of gone on to the next generation, but it's pivoted away from the communal living, and it's now mainly a training venue, which I've had the good fortune to experience. But I love the fact that your daughter Phil is still living there with her family. It's really nice to have that continuation on, and the little plaques of people's names on the door really touched me when I was staying there. So it was really nice. Thank you so much for joining us online today, Phil. It's really great to have you with us. Obviously, a lot of these examples are from a bit further afield than Ballarat, so I did reach out to a lot of all of these co-housing groups to see if people wanted to be a part of today, but it's a little bit far to travel for a lot of them, so great that you could join us online, Phil. Not sure if we have anyone else online. If there is anyone else online, I think somebody from Urban Coop was maybe going to join us. I don't think that they are. Put it in the chat if I've missed you. So then we move on to some examples that are much more recently established. There seems to be a little bit of a gap between kind of those initial 70s, 80s co-housing projects, and more recently, there's been a real resurgence recently, and we can all take a guess as to why. The housing crisis that we're experiencing is really prevalent, and a lot of the more recent examples are just from the last couple of years. So it is something that's really kind of popping up at the moment. Murundaka, however, was founded in 2011. And it was a long journey for them. I can't remember the year that they started kind of trying to set this up, but it had been quite a few years and a few iterations of trying to find a property and that kind of thing. They're in Heidelberg Heights, so fairly central Melbourne. And it's a very interesting example because it's all rental and it's a co-op as well. So it's a slightly different example again, but very similar, where people have their own private spaces and then this communal space where they all come together. Murundaka is very food focused. They must all be foodies because they've got a very large, very kind of abundant garden. They've got a big focus on gardening, quite a big focus on permaculture. with this one, and a big focus on food and communal cooking. I believe they do communal meals 5 nights a week. It's very rare that the co-housing examples that I've seen will do communal meals every night of the week. Most that I've seen are just 3, 4, or 5 kind of midweek, help out with the midweek meals kind of things. And it's a really nice example. 40 people, 20 households, and a big mix of who's staying there. They also take in students, and you can stay there for short periods of time as well. So I believe they often have students and travellers staying there as well as the permanent residents. Urban Coop is another recent example. So 2022, although they had been kind of formed as a group for 3 or 4 years before that, but it was constructed in 2022, I believe, 29 households. And this is actually part of a Nightingale compound in Melbourne, but it's the only Nightingale building in that village that's considered a co-housing project. So Urban Coop actually partnered with Nightingale to get it off the ground. So it's a collaboration. It's apartments, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments, I think, a mix of, with indoor and outdoor communal spaces. So again, they've got a communal dining room, kitchen, laundry, music room, workshop. They even have guest rooms if you have people coming to stay. And they've got a bathhouse under construction, which sounds very exciting. So then we move on to some local examples who we have represented here today. So the Nightingale apartments in Ballarat were built in 2022, finished in 2022. Yep. So the founded there is actually when it was finished, not when it was started. It's got 27 households and 2 businesses. So down on the ground floor, it's actually got the offices of Hilger, which is the property developer that did the Nightingale Ballarat project. And they've also got a sandwich shop. It's called Earl's Sandwiches. Sandwiches and coffee, same guy that runs Ragged Pony. So they've got the bottom floor is basically businesses, and then the rest is apartments. And I don't know if they consider themselves co-housing, not officially, probably not, but it's got a lot of aspects of co-housing. So everyone has their individual apartments, but they've got a rooftop garden, a communal entertaining area up the top as well, communal laundry, and communal bins as well. And we'll hear more about that from Julie in a minute. We then have Westside Co-Housing, who are yet to purchase land, so still in the beginning stages of forming. They're aiming for somewhere around inner west Melbourne, and planning self-contained dwellings with a common house and shared garden and other facilities as well. So they're in the design kind of phase at the moment, looking for members still, and looking for land as well. So very much still in the kind of early days. And we have a representative from Westside here today. And then we have WINC, Older Women in Co-Housing, who were looking for land in Daylesford, couldn't find it, moved to Castlemaine, moved the project to Castlemaine and purchased land right at the end of 2022, which is very exciting, and have been doing their design phase of the project, planning self-contained dwellings. So 31 units planned. As we see, Westside has 30 units planned, and Nightingale has 27 apartments. So as we see, this 30 households seems to be a real sweet spot, and it seems to be kind of one of the most successful models. I think you have to have enough people to kind of have that transition where you've got, you know, young families growing up and then people moving out and then new people moving in to kind of keep it flowing through. And we have Mary Faith with us today, who's the president of WINC, and she's got some slides to share with us. So I'm going to hand over to her.
Thanks. Oh, it's great, and thanks for having us here. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have two other WINC members with us, Maria and Trish, back in the back there. So when we have, yeah, Sandy is also online. That's right. Great. We started in 2017 with Annika Deutsch, who is one of the co-founders of WINC, organized a housing forum in Melbourne at which urban members were present. And the upshot of that was there was a group of people who wanted to do a co-housing project in the city, and there were some of us who wanted to do one in the country. So we started meeting then. We wanted to do one for older women, 50 and up. Many of us are lesbian, but that not necessarily all. And we wanted to live together and support one another as we age. We also wanted to demonstrate the model and share our learnings. So we have a mixed tenure model, which I'll talk about in a minute, which involves having social housing plus what we call middle women, which I'll explain, and then fully owned housing. We have followed the curriculum that's in the book that's on the table there called the Senior Co-Housing Handbook, which is written by an American architect called Charles Durrett, who went to Denmark and studied for a year all the co-housing communities there. And he continues to be extremely active and has newer books and quite a lot of action, including a very interesting book on the solution to homelessness through co-housing. And he's done that with one community in Nevada. So if that's an area of your interest, you might want to explore that. Our three principles that guide our work are sustainability. We want our homes to be as sustainable as possible. We're following passive house principles, but we're not necessarily going to have passive house certification. Part of that is because we believe in that, and part of that is to keep the costs down. The second principle for us is accessibility. We need to be able to get to everybody's house. So as we get older and might need a walking frame or a wheelchair, we want to be able to get there. So even though the land we bought is on quite an impressive hill, we're going to make it work. However, we probably will also get a grant for a lift, I hope. And the third principle is to design for social interaction. So we don't have garages next to our houses. We have car parks on the perimeter of the site, so that you don't come in and just drive up to your house and end up there and don't speak to anybody. You do park in the car park and then you walk to your house. Or if you can't walk, then you might have a gopher, or we may have a golf cart, whatever it is, we'll make it work. But the point is to interact with people, to run into them incidentally. You know, for example, you go to get your mail, which is up at the common house, and you see somebody there and you just say, I'm thinking of going to a movie tonight. Would you like to go? So that some of these things happen, and the social isolation that can happen as we get older tends to be minimized in that way. As I mentioned, and we should do another slide there. Those are the three principles. And that's on the right hand, that's us beginning to do the design work. It's very interesting that Celia Sexton, who's a member of WINC, was the architect for Common Ground. So she continues on with her work, and while she's not our architect, she is definitely our secret architect. So the next one is about our tenancy mix. So we have 5 homes for women who are eligible for social housing, and we will be partnering with Women's Property Initiatives, which is a community housing provider that works with women and families to provide housing there. There's also a category of people, and particularly women, older women, who have some assets, too much for the social housing register and too little to buy a proper house. And what happens to them is that they rent a house, that wipes out their nest egg, then they're eligible for social housing, and it's a 10-year wait. So what we want to do is to provide an opportunity for women to have homes within WINC on a shared equity basis, we hope. So it's possible that the community housing provider may own a few of the middle women's homes, but it's also possible, and we have had the good fortune of having some donors who put some money into the Middle Women Housing Fund, so that WINC itself will be able to own, say, half of the house of one of our middle women members. And then when that person sells or goes into aged care or wants to leave, that house will be continued on because Wink will own half of it and will be sold to another middle woman. So there is in perpetuity the benefit of these donations that we've received. And we continue to fundraise because we've got 5 or 6 middle women, and at the moment we have enough funds to help 3 of them. So we'll be pedaling as fast as we can to make sure that the others can also have a home there. As I say, it may be possible for the community housing provider to buy, say, 2 of those and use them for affordable rental for the middle women. So we're trying to find solutions where this works, so that everyone can have a home together. And as you know, you don't pick your friends by how much money they have. And so you may have a community where there are some women who have good assets and some women who have no assets and some women who are very fortunate. And why not we all live together and make everyone be able to benefit from this? So we do working bees. We have participation requirements so that you're expected to attend meetings. And when we live together, you will be expected to, say, cook once every 10 weeks or so, because we anticipate right now that we will have common meals 3 nights a week. And so a pair of people will do the cooking and preparation for that. So it'd be nice to come home from whatever you've been up to that day and know that you'll be fed and don't have to do the dishes or any of the other things. Yes, yes. We've been following, as I said, the curriculum in the Senior Co-Housing Handbook, and it's based on 3 study groups. One is really about building community and getting to know. It's called Aging Well in Community. And basically you look at some of the things, whether it's the economic aspects of aging or the physical ones or spiritual or whatever it may be. But it really has been a great way for us to get to know each other and figure out how to work together. The second study group is participatory design, which we've now done on 3 different pieces of land, and have learned lots in doing that, and learned what do we want. What do we want, for example, in the common house? Do we want and what we found, for example, is we want a quiet space. We want a space where we can do yoga, we can do meditation, we can have a library, but a place to retreat that's not necessarily your own house, because we're all good at that. But why not be able to retreat in some place where you might find people who have share common interests and you might need a conversation so that can happen. So the common house will have a range of things, including a dining room big enough to hold us all. We'll have 2 guest rooms. So I don't need a guest room in my house because it's a bit small. But I do want to have the opportunity to have my guests stay. So each of us will get, let's say, 10 days a year of space that you can book the common house. So when my brother comes over from the States, he can stay there with me. So that'll be nice. The third study group is about policies, things like how we're going to get the dishes done, how we're going to get the gardens run, and how we're going to manage this thing, new members, waiting lists, all the details about that. Pets. Oh, yes, the policy. That's the one we've tried now because everyone wants, well, a lot of us want to have dogs, and some of us are not as wild about that. So we just have to find a way to work together to make that happen. Next slide. We meet monthly, and we meet either in person and via Zoom, or sometimes just via Zoom, and lots goes on in between, which is great. We make our decisions by consensus, which means that everybody needs to be happy enough with the decision. And we use a process of decision making with colored cards, which organizes it beautifully. It's part of Charles Durrett's work, or that's where we found it anyway. And it's really very helpful and enables us to make decisions quite systematically and caringly, listening to what people have to say, but not letting that block what's going on. So in 2022, in December, we went to an auction in Castlemaine. It was the scariest day of my life. And we were able to buy this land. The way we funded it, because we didn't have somebody to buy it, the way we funded it was to create a unit trust. And 9 of our members who had enough assets to be able to put in, each of us put in $100,000, which we'll get back, hopefully. And we were able to do that. We also did some loans from some of our members, and so we were able to raise the $2+ million to buy the land, and then the $250,000 that it's costing to get the planning permit. So it's hard and it's challenging, and I never thought I was going to do this, but you just do, because that's part of how you do it. And one of the things that Wink really wants to do is, once we've done this, we want to share the model. So anything that we've developed, whether it's a contract for this or a deed for that, or a heads of agreement for that, we're happy to share with any other groups that might benefit from that. The next one, so that's our land as it is now. There's a 4-bedroom house, that long one at the top, and 2 sheds that'll have to be moved. If you go to the next one, we're just about to resubmit our planning application, this time to be advertised, and hopefully we'll get a planning permit in about 6 weeks. That's my hope. I'm ever the optimist. We have somebody who has that other job to remind me that it's not necessarily that easy. Anyway, we're hoping for the best. So what we have on this land is 31 small homes ranging in size from 50 square meters, 60, which is a small 1-bedroom, 65, which is a slightly larger 1-bedroom, and 80, which is a 2-bedroom. If you compare that to the usual Australian house size, these are quite tiny, but they're not tiny homes per se. So that's good. We are still in collaboration with Women's Property Initiative. We do have a heads of agreement with a developer, a local developer, and we're moving right along. And if you do the next slide, I'll stop. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Mary Faith. What are the structures on the right? Car parks. Oh, of course. It's hard to see with so much detail, but it looks so great. I like the fact that the old miners' cottage is just over the borders of the property.
And to the west of us, there is an unpaved road that we now lease for 10 years. So they don't build them. So that's likely to be the side of the bush farm. And a nice space there. Might also dog.
Ah, very nice. Excellent. All right. Well, we're moving to the discussion and Q&A portion of today. You've just met Mary Faith. We also have Julie, who is from Nightingale Apartments in Ballarat. I should also say that I ran a full session on Nightingale Ballarat last year, in which I went on a tour. One of their other residents took me on a tour. And so if you want to see Nightingale Ballarat in great detail, go to the Smart Living Ballarat Facebook page. And if you scroll back, you should be able to find the Nightingale session. There's a full session on Nightingale, and you get to see inside it a lot of different photos that I took of all of their amenities there, and inside one of the apartments as well. So thank you, Julie, for joining us today. And we also have Maggie, who is a Ballarat resident. She's a Ballarat local, and she was looking to start up a co-housing project in Ballarat, but has since jumped ship into Westside Co-Housing, which is the project that's getting started in the inner west of Melbourne. So welcome to our panelists. So I'll start us off. I have a couple of questions, but if you have questions as well, jump in. I firstly want to know what brought you to this kind of style of living, what attracted you to it, and how did you kind of come to this?
My background is in organized children's camping in the US, and I've seen the potential of community living and what that gives to people, and I'm absolutely, totally committed to it. Didn't know I'd be doing it this end of my life, but that's all right. I think it's just as valid there. So I came here, and then I had the good fortune to meet some good people who also agreed with me.
I think just to clarify also that Nightingale housing probably wouldn't be described as a co-housing model, but it's a model of housing that originated in Melbourne. And I am from Melbourne and have been in Ballarat for a few years now, but I found the model very appealing, given it was a model that offered a sustainable way of living with a great focus on building community. And I could see that was an appealing way to look at the future, particularly for people who perhaps haven't got big families, or maybe single people, or and the fact that it also offers social housing. It just appealed. And I've just said to Mary, in fact, we bumped into each other at a session probably 8 years ago or so, and I was looking at these sort of models. Serendipity kind of brought me to Ballarat, and I didn't even realise there was a Nightingale going to be going up here. So I was very pleasantly surprised, and luckily I actually managed to buy the last apartment that was available. So Nightingale is usually like a ballot system. It's not a group of people who have joined to create something. It's developed by the housing non-profit entity, Nightingale, in collaboration with architects and local developers like Hugo, who were in our building. So yes, it was an opportunity that was for me too good to pass by. And I think the fact that, I'm new, well, not so new now to Ballarat, but to have a home, a beautiful home, I've got to say, very beautifully designed, with attention to minimalist living, really, and shared spaces. The shared laundry works brilliantly. We have a beautiful community room, which we can book out ourselves if we want to have a group of people over for dinner or so. We have pets, and that works swimmingly. It's fantastic. We have dogs, cats, don't know what other sort of pets, but it works really well, and it brings a vibrancy to our building as well. Not everyone loves, I guess, pets, but that's okay because it can be kept pretty contained. But we have a few rules, but it's not a massive problem at all. It's lovely, actually. And we have committees that operate different parts of the functions. We have a waste room down in the basement, which is communal, and a couple of people manage that. We have a gardening committee that, and there are people who love the gardening, particularly growing veggies, which we all share. We usually have our own little pieces of garden, little balcony gardens. We have an owners corporation that governs the running of the building, and we also have some other committee, gardening, a building committee, yes. So and a community connections committee. So that's the committee that looks at building community, putting social events together, promoting them, letting people know what's on in Ballarat, that kind of thing. So for a group of people who never knew each other, we all came together, and we've been together now for 2 years. When I say together, we all live there. We all have our own independent lives. People can choose how much they want to be involved or not. But certainly it's encouraged that we contribute. We have a bin roster. And we bump into each other in the laundry or down in the basement or wherever. And that whole idea of living on your own, perhaps, but having a community of friends is brilliant. It doesn't work it's not for everyone, but it's certainly for me. I love it. Yeah.
So,
You can sell.
cars.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if the dogs next door are making a noise or music's too loud, have you?
Well, I guess it's just about any kind of group situation, really. We haven't had that problem. And I guess it's about, you'd perhaps approach the person and say, your dog's driving mad in the middle of the night. But I guess it's about any kind of group setting. It's about group dynamics and people getting along and good communication and all of those sort of basic functions. I guess, we say, for the instance, the dogs, we deemed that we wouldn't have the rooftop area, which is the communal space for dogs toileting. We would go down, have to go down onto the road. So there's a good example of something that's conducive to everyone's comfort.
Regularly? with other reasons?
We have a body corporate or an owners corporation that meets regularly, and that's about usually between 4 and 6 members, depending on the year.
How often do they meet?
Probably monthly or so. Yep. And the other subcommittees, like the Community Connections Committee, meets every second month. The waste group probably don't meet so formally, but just get on with working out how things work. The gardening committee are up in the garden a lot and probably have a formal meeting whenever suits them. It's a little bit loose, so it's not like absolutely formal, but it's also about just working that out with the people who live there as well. So there's not a sort of we don't have a very thorough range of policies and procedures. They're kind of evolving as we go. Yeah.
I know a couple of people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lovely place to live. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Thanks. Oh, yes.
Is there a risk at all that just turn into drone control? Is there
Yeah, just being another apartment block. Yeah, that's a good question.
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit.
I was just checking if you heard that question. Are you able to hear people asking or no? No, okay, that's all right. So we'll repeat the question. The question was from Grace, and it was with the Nightingale model, is there a danger of it just turning into apartments, just normal apartments? So I'll pass back to Julie.
And it is a good question. In the lead up or in the early stages when people bought in off the plan, some it was 2 or 3 years before the build was finished. Others, they came in a bit more close to the building being completed. And Nightingale do hold public meetings to explain the model. So it's not for everybody. Not everyone wants to share the laundry or wants to be in close proximity. It doesn't suit everyone. So I guess everyone going in had a shared desire and willingness to be part of this model. Yeah. And then over time, it's about settling into the model, settling into living that way. And then for some people, over time, they might think, oh, well, it's been great, but I might move on to something else. So I guess anything has a risk to that degree, but really the fact that we've set up these intentional supports where those who have the strong commitment to, and it's most of us really, not all, the strong commitment to community building and to living in this way, otherwise we wouldn't really be there, and nurturing that. And we also have community forums where everyone comes together. We talk about how it's going and what else we might do and what priorities we want for the next year or so. So without it being an arduous process for everyone, because we're there by choice living our lives, but we also want this model to work as well. Yeah, it's a good question. Yep. Yes.
So do you have the freedom, if you wanted to move somewhere else, to rent your property out to other people?
Another good question. Ideally, the model is that everyone's an owner and it builds community and that there's a consistency over time. That's the ideal, and that's the intention of Nightingale, is that it's bought in to by people who want to live there. They dissuade purchase for investment and for making a profit, ramping up prices and making profit. So yes, that's what we all understood when we moved in. The reality is that in a few cases, some people have, moved back. Well, I think just one that I can think of is moving back to Melbourne and looking at either selling or, if not, then renting. There are a couple of people who are renting, yeah. People who come in are welcomed, met, we explain how we work. We have a WhatsApp group where we can all communicate. They're invited, you know, everyone's sort of embraced and welcomed. And so I think people coming in get a sense of, well, this is what it's like living in here as well. So it's a bit of a bonus for people who do end up renting. It's a very small proportion who do, but you know, that's life. We just kind of work with what happens for individuals. But on the whole, for all Nightingale housing, it's about, as far as possible, that people own their homes, and that community building is a really strong feature. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'm not actually living in it yet, but I think where it started for me was I'm from the UK, and when I went to art school, I studied history of architecture with a great young architect. So this was in the 70s, and when it was all happening, and I'm still hoping we're kind of getting back to that feeling a bit at the moment. But yeah, so he had examples that he was telling us about, friends of his, of various projects happening in the UK, similar. They weren't co-housing exactly, but they were similar communities and so on. And I thought this looks fantastic. Then later on, I lived in a large squat and another squat in London, which was some more than less communal living. It was at a time when we had sort of political squats. So we had the squatters union in our street and had connection with Dutch squatters in Amsterdam, and, you know, whatever. So it was quite a movement. And yeah, I think squatting gets a bad rap, you know, it's a lot of good about squatting. And I'm very pleased that Victoria, it's still legal. It's fantastic. But then, yeah, other things happened, moved here, had kids, but now, yeah, my life's sort of changed a bit, and I'm, yeah, still got that passion for that sort of communal living, and so investigated co-housing, and I think the co-housing group in Eltham was one that I heard about early on, Brougham Street. That's an interesting one, a little bit smaller than the Magic 30. They're 20 households, I think. And they are actively looking for five households to be filled there at the moment. So if anybody's interested, that's a good one to look up. In Eltham, yeah, it's called Brougham Street co-housing. Yeah. Another good resource, if anybody's interested, is the Co-Housing Australia site, which has a lot of links and various information sessions you can watch online, and they've put together a lot of really good, useful information there too. And then I heard about Westside Co-Housing because I was interested in Brougham Street, but my finances aren't available yet, so I wouldn't be in time. They have two buildings, existing buildings on their land, and they're ready to start building quite soon. They've finally got through their planning process, and are hoping to actually have the houses ready to live in 2026, I think. So I wouldn't, yeah, my finances aren't ready for that. And then I heard about Westside Co-Housing, again, a group of, they're aiming for about 30 to 35 households. And I went to one of their design workshops, their first one really, in November. Yes, as Ellen said, they don't have an actual property yet. We're actively looking places. There's one in particular in Footscray looking at the moment. But I was so impressed with this group. So at the moment we are, I think there's 14 households sort of committed to the project. And yeah, actively looking for land. And of course, once you acquire land, then it becomes a lot more of a solid sort of thing that people can realise where they're going to be living, which council, and you know, all those different things. But yeah, very much in the way that Mary Faith has talked about. Yeah, very similar. We are utilising the sociocracy as a system of getting consensus agreement in meetings. But yeah, very much the same ambitions, but it's a multi-generational. Generally speaking, I think it's easier nowadays to get older cohort at the beginning. It's difficult for younger people to put that money up front, but we do have 2 families with children at the moment, and we've got, encouragingly, some new younger people getting involved. So yeah, hopefully it will be a healthy cross section. Yeah. That's all. If anybody wants to ask about that.
There are 2 questions online. I'll ask them both and then I'll pass over. The first question was, what are the price ranges for Nightingale Apartments? And the second was, how do they get in contact with Westside CoHousing? That was to you first, Julie.
So I think, you know, Nightingale Apartments, they'll vary depending on where they are. And I'm not the expert on what the prices are. Oh, sorry, the prices for Nightingale housing was the question. And as they are all across the country, they'll vary, and they also vary in size from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms in our complex. Now I'm casting my mind back when we bought in. They would, I mean, one of the concepts is about accessible housing. So and also social housing. So we have 6 social housing apartments that are run by a social housing organisation, owned and run by them. So that there's another level of variability. I think from the lowest end, it was around high 300s, and it would probably be around mid 600s or so for the upper end. So I'm being quite vague there because I'm not, you know, time has passed, markets have changed, that kind of thing. But you know, having come from Melbourne, it was quite a different market. But the prices in Melbourne would be more elevated than they are here. Yeah. The next question.
How do we get in touch with?
Yes, I could put the email address perhaps on the site or something. Could you do that? Yeah. Or if somebody wants to give their details. And I'm actually on the welcoming committee, so you'll be getting a email back from me. But and from Eleanor, who's the sort of one of the founding members, and who's also an architect and is also a member of CoHousing Australia. But yeah, I think that would probably be the easiest, rather than, I mean, the email address is literally just westside.cohousing@gmail.com, so all lowercase. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Maggie. And I should say, CoHousing Australia have a website with contact details for pretty much all of the current co-housing projects in Victoria as well. It's not a great website, I must say, but they do have a map with a lot of contact details there as well. Had a question up the back, or just.
Well, my question is for Mary Faith. Am I saying that? Is that your name? Is that right? Great. my question is, how did you go about finding the right mix of people that could live and plan, like complete this massive process together cohesively? And how did you do that? Like, did you have to exclude anyone, and on what basis? Like, how did you do it?
A very interesting process. And fortunately, it's been very warm and welcoming for the most part. Initially, it was a group of women who came together in a seminar that Annika put together. Then from that, we started talking about it. We did use flyers. We did use a range of other ways to reach out, let people know about us, and they would contact us. And then we had some publicity through various media. We tried to turn the ABC away a couple of times because we felt we weren't ready, and they kept coming back. So there was a story that, and then, so a range of things like that. It is interesting to try to create a community like this where we all want to be friends, but not everybody gets along, and not everybody probably is comfortable with co-housing and its sort of intention to commit to one another. So members have a process. People who want to explore WINC to join come to a range of, first they get some information and read lots of things, and if that doesn't put them off, then they're invited to meetings and they need to attend 3 or 4 things. We have an interview with them just so we can know who they are and they can know who we are. And then they become an associate member. And then if they want to live with us, we actually have almost a full house at the moment, but not quite. Of our 31 homes, we probably have 1 left for purchase and 3 that are still available for social housing. So once we've gotten to know somebody through this process of meeting them either online or in person and coming to things, then we have a consensus process, and every other member who's a current member needs to agree that that person should be admitted to membership. We have had people join and then they spent 6 or 12 months with us and thought, not my place, and that's fine. We sadly have had one of our members die, and so it's a come and go kind of thing, and a lot of it is word of mouth. We also were featured in a documentary film on social isolation, so that got out there. And I also want to acknowledge that the funders of that film, which was Fraser's Property Group, we met when we were part of this film on isolation, and I asked them if they could build our project, and he said, no, I don't think the directors will let us do that, but we'll help you. And they have given incredible pro bono support for the last 2 years. So we meet with them monthly. There's a development team of 4 or 5 people from Fraser's who's willing to meet with us, and they give us advice. So it's goodwill, and there's a lot of goodwill out there. And membership, as we try to create a process where we get to know you, you get to know us, and hopefully we'll come up with the right decision. We've had one member drop out who was out for about 3 or 4 months and came back. She's still with us. We'll see how we go. So it's life. Yeah.
Are we able to view this workshop later?
Yes, good question. So this workshop is currently being live streamed to Zoom and also to our Facebook, and the recording will be posted to the Facebook. So Smart Living Ballarat Facebook page, the recording will be available there to watch back. And if people have any questions or comments after the session, they can put it on the Facebook video, and I'll endeavour to get answers to any questions that people have. Did we have any more questions? Anyone online before we finish up? It is actually past 1:30. We've been chatting. It's such an interesting topic. There's so much that we can talk about. Phil, you have a question?
Look, not so much a question, but just a quick comment. Having worked in this space of intentional communities and lived it for 40 years, just a tick of applaud for all of the work that's being done still, and that the co-housing model, given the spectrum, I think is a really, really positive one, because it actually deals with, as you mentioned, Ellen, the sort of tendency for people to wanting their own space, but still wanting to be part of community. And the only other thing I'd say is that the Nightingale approach is probably easy to get up because it's a developer that does it, and then people move in, but it's still got some really positive community aspects. But it's not quite the full-on thing of co-housing where you're actually doing the development, design and work, which is also fantastic. But the system is a bit against it. So it's a lot harder to get up because council regulations, financing, stuff is a lot harder to organise. But good on you for all doing it and being part of what I call learning to live and work well together. So congratulations. That's all.
Thanks, Phil. I feel like we could keep talking, but I will endeavour to wrap up the session. Maggie has requested the library purchase a couple of co-housing books, and they've just come in just in time for this session, luckily. So creating co-housing and co-housing communities, they'll be available to borrow from the library. And I'll just mention the next session. So next month, we'll be looking at non-financial economies. It's another big topic. So it's same day, same time, 4th Wednesday from 12:30 till 1:30. It will be here. And we will have, again, a bit of a discussion panel. We're going to have a representative from the Ballarat Foundation to talk to us about volunteering. We're going to have somebody from Uniting talking about the Sharing Tree, which is their new time banking project, which is very exciting. And somebody from the Ballarat Good Karma Network talking about the gifting economy. So there's a lot of really good stuff to talk. It's another really, really big topic with a lot of moving parts, but it's going to be a really interesting one as well. So thank you again to Mary Faith, Julie and Maggie. Another question?
One last question, and that is whether there's any willingness for co-housing here in Ballarat. That's it.
Yeah, it's a good question. And, we've seen one of our panelists, Maggie, try to kind of start up a co-housing project in Ballarat and kind of get a bit frustrated with the the slowness of the project. I believe that Hugo, who are responsible for Nightingale, have a couple of other housing developments that they're putting up, one in Black Hill and one in Lyons Street, that are, again, similar to Nightingale. They're not the full co-housing kind of thing, but they're very, very close. They are that step towards communal living. So they're two ones that are either under construction or planning, at the planning permit stage at the moment. Hopefully this session has inspired a few people, and there might be a few people that want to get together and start one up in Ballarat. I think there's definitely a growing need and a growing interest. I would encourage people to jump on the Smart Living Facebook group. We have a page and a group. The page is where the videos go, but I do share it over to the group. The group, we're really trying to get into being a really discussing kind of space with the community. So I encourage people after the session to go find that group and go have a chat about it. Share your experiences, ask any other questions that you have out of today's session, and kind of we'll continue the conversation there.
So when will the workshop be available for us to view?
So the workshop will be posted straight after. It's part of like me closing the Zoom, it posts it to Facebook. So yeah, it posts it immediately. So you'll be available, it'll be available if you go home, you'll be able to watch it back. Any other questions before we finish up? Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us today, both in person and online. Sandy, I've been looking at your cute little dogs there pretty much the entire time. I think that's the real star of the show. And thank you so much to Phil, founding member of Common Ground, for joining us online. I'm really excited that you're able to join us today as well. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.